Hi, my name is Benedict. Today's video is going to be about writing melody and then being able to take those core melodic ideas and expand them out into a piece. Now, I've done some of this before. The videos are long, and I know sometimes people just don't want to watch long videos, but it's a massive subject. I mean, this is several thousands of years of learning and human development here. We're trying to jam into one box. And I know it's not always easy. Your options are you can go out and read a book. I can't remember the name, but there was a famous book that came from the Victorian era about how to write melodies. And it's all correct, but you want to kill yourself before you've gotten partway through the first chapter. Not because it's wrong, simply because you kind of feel very top down that this is how you have to do this. If you don't do it this way, then you're wrong. All kinds of rigid rules about you can't use consecutive fifths and all that kind of stuff. The modern mindset really doesn't appreciate that approach. And I know some don't appreciate even my approach, which sort of says, look, you don't want to do this. But that's based on being practical, simply because I know what happens when you do the thing that I advise you not to do. Simply because I've done this for 30 years and I've watched the musicians around me fail with that strategy. So is it wise, is it kind for me to encourage using that same failing strategy? I'm going to go with the whole maybe not kind. It might get me more likes. Oh yeah, please subscribe. But I'm working on the whole honest thing and hoping that people will go, you know what, once I got over that, he really was right and helpful. Your call. But please stick with me on this. Remember, right back at the beginning of the video, it says the thinking guy. So I'm going to walk you through the thinking, but I will actually practically show you what I'm doing. So again, to recap, the aim here is to show you how to write melodies. So to be able to come up with collections of notes, strings of notes, that form an idea out of which you can build music. I really strongly rail against the whole you can't have melody in music because it's just so uncool. I mean, that's like a really messed up 90s attitude that we should be well and truly rid of by now. So, to make this slightly easier, I've given myself a sound set already. I've got a bust reverb, a bass sound. I've just taken a best guess approach for what I might want here. Which will be just our sort of central sound. This is where we're going to start. A lead sound. I've deliberately baked in the vibratos and stuff like that, so we don't need to worry about performance information. That's a whole other video. And, of course, strings, because I'm going to be able to show you how to basically orchestrate your melody. Now, please don't be put off by the word orchestrate. It doesn't mean you have to turn your psytrance into orchestra shit. It doesn't. Orchestrate merely means fill out my melodic idea with the other instruments that I'm using. So, let's start with our melodic idea and look at what is a melody. A melody is a basic building block out of which, well, it's not the most basic, I'll show you the more basic, but it's the building block which we use to build music. And close down the rack. Now, music is notes. Some of you may have thought, but Benedict, how can you write music? There's no drums. You must have fucked up, because there are no drums. Again, my argument is if you start by writing drums, you write these huge, enormous drums, and they take all your space. They take all your bandwidth. And then, of course, there isn't the space to develop melodic parts. Now, melodic parts are the special bits, the really special bits. Take, say, Hotel California. I know I always pick on this, but it's one of the most recognizable songs in the canon of rock. And by rock, I mean rap, trap, the whole bloody lot. Everything that's modern, popular music. It's one of the most recognizable things. If we were to take the melodies out of that, what kind of a song would it be? A pointless one. Gotcha. So, we will not be working with drums. I've made videos about working with drums. I'm not the popular drum guy. So, we'll work with melody. So, again, very tempting for you to start with bass lines. You can do that. You can start by saying, okay, I'm going to lay down a bass line, which is essentially part of laying down a chord progression. So, C, E, flat probably, or minor, A, B. We could call that our chord progression. And we could write that down, and then we could work out how to make melodies and what have you from that. That's one way. I have shown that before. There's a whole video on doing that. But this way around, I'm actually going to show you from not a lead, because we can build from a lead, but that's more complex, but from just having a melodic idea. And when I said the smallest building block, melody is that, but just like physics, there are little blocks inside of a melody. So a melody is your general big brick that you use to pile up. But inside that, we all know bricks are made of stuff, and the stuff that's inside those bricks are these. Let's just make this big. We've got an ostinato, so let's build ourselves an ostinato. An ostinato is a regularly repeating section. I'm figuring this is going to make a pretty workable ostinato. Now I'm going to work in C major because that's easy. It's all the white keys. You don't have to worry about them black keys. Not that there's anything wrong with black keys. I think it's black keys. So, that becomes an ostinato. But by now you're probably going, that's a bit boring and pointless. It is indeed. It's a fragment of an idea. Let's slow that down because that sound is reasonably slow. Nice and stately. I dig that. So, that's an ostinato. Now, ostinatos are a big deal in electronic musical forms because we use them ad nauseum. So at least understand what they are. So that first little fragment where we go, it's an ostinato. We then can have a motif, which again you might think, why do I want all this stuff? But these words help you describe what you're doing. A motif is the next bit where it's a little bit bigger. Blah, 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 blah. That's a motif. That's a theme that we apply to the Empire and Vader in particular. So every time we hear that, we know it's Empire and Vader and evil overlords crushing us and what have you. That's great. So you commonly build one of those as well, because it's a recognizable bit. You might call it a hook. So we've got our section, but there's only so many times we want to hear that before we're going to go, look, this is boring as fuck. In which case, we need to bring in our friend variation. We can't keep playing the same thing over and over again. But we don't want to do something random. If we're doing makes no sense. It's random. It's got no shape. So here we have something that has shape. You can see it and it goes up. But it pauses. It's got a quick, slow. That's its shape. That actually is a little phrase. It's not much of a phrase, but it's a phrase. So when I speak, I tend to try and phrase. So the way that I deliver that thing that I'm saying helps it to be more understandable for you And just like there, I take little breaks so that your brain's got a few moments to go blip, 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 and file all that information away. Because if I just keep talking at you non-stop, not leaving any gaps or anything like that, it's only a matter of time before your head explodes and you go, can't listen to this shit. So, a phrase, it's not a great phrase. We'll deal with those a little bit more later. But we've got our ostinato, we've played twice. 2's good. 3 is also good. Let's try this. Oh, lovely. We've got the same pattern, short, short, long, but we've introduced a different note. At that point we go, oh, exciting. Now you may be going, but this is boring shit, Benedict, because it's not EDM or it's not Psy or whatever. But no, this is about the psychology, the thinking of how this works. You adapt it to your style, but the rules are the same. And the rules is not like book learning, it's just about this is psychology. So we've now got a variation. Let's listen to this and see what we need to have come next. Okay. Do you have a sense of what you want to hear next? Please don't tell me exactly the same stuff, because there's only so far you can do that. That's why something like, say, Darude didn't actually become a particularly successful act. Sandstorm, yes, it was really attention-grabbing, but you tended to be a bit done before the track was even finished, because there's only so many times you want to hear that before you're a bit like, yeah. But the rest of the record, boring and pointless, because they did the same thing over and over and over again. Now, I know I played the wrong note because it's not in my key. Let's try this. We've got another variation. We've gone for a long, really short, short. Short, short, long, and we've kind of swapped that around. If we swapped it around too literally and used exactly that length and exactly that length, it kind of wouldn't work out as well. You can do it, but it's going to sound a bit rigid, stolid, like too much mashed potato that's kind of not been real nicely made. So we now have a phrase. This isn't the world's best melody, but it's the beginnings of a melodic phrase. That's our sections. See, we're happy to hear this again. It's gone through enough variation that we're actually pleased to hear this same material again. It's comforting because we know it now. It's like, oh yeah, I know you. It's got a nice shape, therefore we know it's pleasing. We know where it's going. But we might want to, because we are repeating it, to look at having some more sort of variation. So we say comfortable by giving you what you had before here. Let's just try this. Cool, but it says this has to be different. Yeah, see, it feels unconnected now. So glue these together. Bear with me a sec. All being well, this will sound right. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that there because for the moment, what we're going to do at the end of this there is an error here, I believe. This just sounds like it comes in late. So we've got the beginnings of a kind of cadence here. Now, I technically shouldn't put that on the D, but it says unfinished. That's cool, because we're looking to make an arrangement. We're looking to make a whole piece. Now, straight away, I've got a 16-bar loop, and you might be thinking, but why aren't you piling sounds on top of each other so that you can make this great... I don't want to do that. That's the last thing I want to do right now, because I'm going to wreck my idea. Ideas travel through time. I've spoken about this a few times before. Time and space are part of writing music. So I will give my sense of self a sense of how this is going to move through time before I give myself a sense of how it's going to move through height. This throws us back into that loop. Actually, let's just have a listen. I'm making this up as I go, so it's perfect. It's possible things may not be quite right, and also because of these god-awful headphones. I hate all headphones. They're not awful headphones, they're just cheap and not very nice to use, but I hate them because they don't give me a sense of what I'm hearing, so I can actually write notes that are a little duff. So this isn't quite right. Let's try this. So this is another variation. We've got our pattern. It goes through again and varies. It then starts from the beginning, but the last, we want to vary that a little bit again, so that we're not constantly just hearing the same stuff over and over. It doesn't resolve very nicely there. It should, but it doesn't. I acknowledge that it's not resolving nicely, so I do something about it. Because it's the end of this section, and I know it's not looping back, which makes it resolve, I've got to work out how to solve that. Now, this is where having some theory helps you tremendously. But the more you do this, the easier it is to do. But having a little bit of theory, not a lot, just a little bit of theory, when you meet situations like this, rather than going, oh shit, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing, and trying to hide it, which just doesn't work out, you can then start to apply some of those rules of what goes better with what. See, that timing just isn't that great. Now that feels really nice. Let's try this. You don't want your phrases to run too long. This is starting to run too long. So you see what I did? Created a wee gap here. Just lets you take a breath. If that's a wind instrument, it actually lets them take a breath too, so that they can set themselves up to play this bit, which becomes a phrase. I've given myself a couple more bars on the end because that's the end of that section. We need to transition to the next section, whatever that's going to be, which we're not worried about right now. So we've got 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, we'll call that 4, 5, 6, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 7, 8. Variations. All the same core idea. Now it's important you do that. This isn't a full melody yet, but it's melodic movement. While some styles say you should only and ever use a certain note, screw you. It's not interesting music. No matter how much adrenaline it gives you in the short term, it's not interesting music if there's no sense of movement. You're allowed to have a grand bass, so we can say that's perfectly legitimate. That's a grand bass. It plays that, nothing but that. Possibly through the whole piece. It's quite a medieval way of doing it. You know, it didn't have a lot of tonality, or timbral tonality. No, that's not right. Melodic tonality at that time. So it tended to be quite simple. But that's basically also how a bagpipe works. The sound's not right to give you that feel, but you've got your drone, commonly on G, I think, and then we work around that. We play around that. Really nice feel. And if you're working in a style that doesn't want a lot of musicality on top of it, definitely look back at the older forms, because they are designed to have minimal melodic movement. Not because they thought melodic movement was evil, simply because they hadn't understood how to do more Mozart-y shit. So EDM could learn an awful lot from medieval folk songs. It's a style that if I had to write EDM-y kind of stuff, I would look at that to go, okay, how did they solve that problem there? Interestingly, the same way they solved it in doom metal. Not a lot of movement, basically medieval music, which is why it kind of sounds that way, because it is. So, notice how we've now got 32 bars of music plus our transition starting to happen into our next segment. We're not stuck in loop hell now, because we've got movement. We can play that round and round quite a bit, and we've got a lot of place to go. Now, let's start to look at bass. We'll go back to the beginning. And we'll say, okay, how are we going to add bass in a useful way? The easy way, as I said, is basically just to add a kind of a ground bass. But I don't want to settle for 100% easy here, because it's kind of not teaching you all anything. Might be too low. Let's go here. We'll see as we go. What do we get? I like it, but the pacing is wrong for our core idea. Yay for stretching. Let's see what we get. This may clash a little, which is where it's handy if you do have something that allows you to see several layers of notes in one box. kind of like it, but these are not playing long enough. But we can always solve that. I actually think they're not playing long enough at all, so in which case I'm going to try doubling it. So you remember, time is your friend. Don't be afraid of time. A lot of people are afraid of time and they think, oh, I'll solve time by going faster. It's not necessarily wise. This may not be the best here. What note are we on? We're on a G there. Let's try that as a D. Nice. Again, the advantage of at least knowing what your key and scale is and what's comfortable. Even though that is comfortable, we want the bass to fill out what's happening above at that point, because it's a major pulse. So that's a better combo than that. That sounds a bit weak. That sounds stronger. We could do that, which is a bit stronger again, but then going back to the main sound that or the main pitch that we've got. So I think that's probably better. Let's kill him, copy him off. Oh, nice. See how we've taken the same notes, put them against some slightly different notes, and as a result, our harmonies have changed. This is a great trick in the composer's toolkit. Bach was an absolute master of this. With 2 notes, he could create this, tremendous sound. And again, I hear some of you saying, but it's EDM, but Bach's an old dead dude and he wrote shit. Because he didn't have a 909, he was a dick. You're a dick. And it's like, yeah, okay, good on you. But all the music that we've got, to a great extent, comes from what old ugly dead dudes like him were doing back then. Ignore that at your peril. It doesn't mean you have to turn around and suddenly start going, ooh, I'm getting my funk on to Bach, but understand how he did what he did, because you can learn stuff from it, and you can steal from him like a bastard, because he's so dead he ain't coming after you. And you will not be the first person in EDM to do this. I'm pretty sure that Sash had at least a passing understanding of Bach. Listen to Adelante if you question my sense on that. Let's run this through again. Chances are this is going to roll quite nicely. This I want to change at this point. Not sure, let's try up here. Oh, that's more of a... Let's try both. Because we've got an F here and an E here. nice. You can hear that it's rolling together really quite nicely. There we've got our C, which is the resolution. With a melody, you almost always, you're allowed to break these rules, but don't go breaking them until you know why you're breaking them. You almost always want to start on your root note, which you've seen we're in C major, is C. You can start your melody in C below if you want, or C above if you want, which we may well do when we come to our lead sound. But you're going to start on your C, and you really want to try and finish either on C, or C, or C. Because when you start on a C, you're saying, this is the key of my piece. You've now just told the listener this is C major. Now the thing is, the listener doesn't need to know anything about keys or scales or that they even exist, but you have just told them that's C major. That's a diminished A. An augmented fifth. You're allowed to create whatever key scale you want. If you look on my YouTube, like on all my videos, and scroll right down to the bottom, you'll find 3 or so pieces which are named with 3 letters: C, D, G, A, E, G, that sort of thing. So A, E, G. They're the only notes in that piece. No other notes. They can be an A, E or G down here, or anywhere else, but that's my whole key scale. And it's not like the average person's going to listen to that and go, bugger me, that guy only used 3 notes. They're just going to hear music and go, I like it or I don't like it. So you can make whatever scale you want, but for the moment, stick with something easy like C major, or if you like C minor, then it can be... As soon as someone hears that, they go, ooh, gee, we got C minor. They don't know what it is, but they know what notes belong there. That starts to be like, because we're jumping around. So we've started on C. We end on C. This is a cadence. You can read about cadences. There are all kinds of interesting on cadences. But the simplest one is the note below your root note. And that is allowed to be an octave up. So we might start here. You can hear how, since we hit this note, you know where we want to go. There. That leading note tells you where to go, and when we do, we're saying finished in a really, truly satisfying way. Now there are ways that you can do cadences that are kind of soft, like we could start on our C, that's a kind of cadence. What it is, I don't know, don't care. But be careful of having a whole melody and that's it. Because that feels very like, I just fell off a cliff. That's cool. Next phrase. Interesting. We've finished properly. Using the other half of cadence, which is, or the main cadence, which is the F. So, devil's chord, which is the B below the C, and the F above the C. That's classic cadence. Don't be afraid of using them. You might think, oh, but it sounds cheesy, man. There are ways that you can hide them. Yes, you can use them for the big finish. Blah, 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 blah. Brilliant. That's how classical music works, or orchestral music works. It gives you that power because it uses these mental things where we feel comfortable. But you can hide them. I hide them all the time. Not because I want to not be there, in part because I'm not great with using them in the grandest sense. I don't use big, heavy chords. But you can do things like what I've done here. If we go back, we'll see it probably more with the melody. But this fella here, we've got an F, we've got a B, but they end here. They put something in the middle, but in this case it works, or at least I like it. And that's good enough for me. So, we've now got hey, that's ended up on the wrong octave, but that is super easy to fix. Brilliant. So we've got 3 notes we've taken as our very core idea. We've gone, oh, I like that. Great. So we've now worked out how to use that idea by having a call and a response, which is what this is. Call, hi Rupert, hi Benedict. Call and response. Really, really integral part of music. You hear it all the time in classical music, you hear it all the time in jazz. Rock kind of sometimes tries to hide it, but it's still there. However, call and call, hi Rupert, hi Rupert, hi Rupert. I said hi Rupert. Rupert, you ignoring me? It's not real satisfying, is it? So, let's have a look at lead. We'll go back to a smaller block of our music. We'll give ourselves a block to be working in. Again, nice if you can see all of the notes that you're working with in one box, but you know what? I couldn't do that until about a year ago. So you learn to use your ears. It does mean as you sort of get more into this that you've got to shuttle backwards and forwards, and it is a little bit of a pain in the ass, so I'm super glad this feature arrived in Reason. But if you don't have that option, don't say, fuck no, this sucks, I'm not going to do it. You just do it. So, we want to start with a C. As anticipated, we probably want to go an octave high. If you put everything on the same octave, you've got very little room to move, like really very little room to move at all. You can only then use your really safe notes, which are going to be C, E, G, and C again. you've kind of got very little space to move because those notes are on top of each other. So it becomes sort of almost the extent of your harmonic options. Whereas when you're an octave apart, is actually pretty interesting. Just plain ugly. So don't make the mistake of saying everything's got to be in the same octave, and then doubly the mistake of saying they've all got to be in the same octave below middle C, because anything above middle C is not cool. Grow up. So we don't want to have our melody doing exactly the same as what we've got there already. It's good to echo, but we don't want it to do the same thing. For the moment, I'm just going to whack a couple of notes in and see how I feel about them. Unimaginative. I like that. So let's see what we can do with this. That first note's just way too long. Go where I want you to go. Don't you know who your boss is? Yuck. So I don't want. Sometimes you just really want to play something, which is hard when you've got a monophonic sound. Nice, but too tense. Look, I'll try it. Very safe road, which is, but I'm trying to move kind of quickly because this time goes by, and yes, when you've got the time you can finesse and make something much nicer, but I'm trying to make sure this isn't too dull for you. Okay, so we've got something which is clearly related to our core idea, which was this. It's one of our variations. See? Variations. They are your friend. They allow you to take an idea and spin off an infinite number of things which are related. Obviously, on the far end, infinite, it might be hard to pair the two together, but you don't need infinite. You really only need, well, you see, I ended up with 8 sections there in the main sort of melodic movement, which is not a real melody. So being able to spin off a few of them is really a good thing. The teacher who taught me the value of this, I was aware of it, but I didn't really understand the value of it. The guy who really taught me the value of it and the technique for doing it, he said, you know, at university, at the conservatoire, his instructor would say, okay, here's a little melodic line, a phrase. Now your homework is to go away and to come up with, 10 or 20 variations of it. So you'd sit there, you'd have your basic idea, which is, in this case, and you'd go, okay, well, what can I do with that next? That's a variation. There's another variation. There's another variation. So you keep rolling them, one off another. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it. Again, I hear some of you going, but this is EDM, Benedict, we don't do that shit. No, at your own peril. If you can do this, it doesn't mean you have to use them, but it means they're there. And as soon as you go, yeah, but I need a little bit more variety here, rather than just going, I have no idea what to do, and either gluing the same block in, boring, or coming up with some kind of weird random idea. I'll just, put another sound in here, something else that goes. You run yourself into a corner really fast. Whereas if you can do variations, you're going to find solutions really fast, and your solutions are going to be better than other people's solutions. So let's see where we're at. See, I've left space. This is a lead line. It's supposed to be like somebody's playing it. Might be early to do a copy, but let's do that. But we're not going to directly copy it, we're going to variation it. So, we know we've got the wrong notes. Don't think we want that right now, so we're going to make it go away. Let's just see what we've got. What are my notes here? We're moving to a D, which is kind of what I thought, but better to know than get it wrong. So I've now actually got a loopable section. This might sound a bit better. Again, remember, in the cans, it's very hard for me to hear what harmonies are right. It's more comfortable. We'll go again, because why not? Now what I want to do is actually try this first. Let's drag this up, because this worked nicely. We've had a slower section, so let's see if we can't use this faster run again. just have a look at our other notes, make sure we're not getting terribly off track, which we might be. Now we do have a D here and an E here, which, remember, why are you doing that? Not comfortable. But because we've got them in different octaves, it's actually quite pretty. It provides us a little bit of tension that's not problematic. And that tension's nice because it's leading us to the second half of this phrase. Except that doesn't belong there. Now that's actually rather cool, because the second half of this is the same second half as that. We had this little bit here in the middle, but I've pulled it forward. So we've got similar, but it's rearranged. That's really nice. The one concern I do have is I feel like my sound here is too slow. So let's try speeding it up. So, if you were watching what I did there, just tiny mix just to give us a little bit more space to hear things in, especially. So we've got a melody. There is a melody. We can solo this, which we'll do just here. That's a fully formed melody. We've got phrasing, those sections where it speaks and then breathes, and we've got a start and finish. I would be amazed if this doesn't start and finish on Actually, no, it doesn't because it has a D, but we've got the D here. So if we run that again, we can run this through our second thing, and it should work. It's a little less perfect because we did change some things towards the end here. Just moving things around because it's nice to do that. You see, just moving things up and down just changes the shape. So we've got a G and an F, which means we do need safer notes here. See, just by shuttling things around, we know that we moved some things. We want it to be essentially the same, but we also want that little bit of difference. So now if we were to loop this section, it would actually loop. But because we want it to finish too, we also... But I might make a little bit more... of that finish. Just highlights that end a little bit. You know, you shouldn't hide your ends, you should make something grand of them. So we've now got a fully functional piece in many ways. And I know a lot of you go, but it doesn't have a mix and it's not mastered. And it's like, no. We're writing music. We're not writing mixes. We're not writing masters. But we've got all the core elements of what we need. So we could well say, okay, I'm going to go off with that now. What we'd really be wanting to do at this point is to create another section. Because we can't play that over and over. We do have 1 minute and 8 seconds of music, and that's great. We're not stuck in 8 bars, which is, 16 seconds or whatever. We've got a minute's worth of music, so we've got a third of a piece of music. Brilliant. Now the great thing with pop music is it's normally an ABA or ABAB, ABACA kind of a deal. So here we could be making ourselves, let's say an ABA. Sounds a reasonable sort of thing with the material that we've got. So A being that glob there, B being some similar but not the same glob, and A being that there same glob again. In which case, we could conceivably, we're not going to, but we could conceivably copy this, drag it out there and say, there you go. I've now given myself 32 bars or whatever for my B section. We might have to have a little couple of transitions and build what have you, but that's it. See, now I've given myself a target of how my piece is going to come together. Except we're not doing that, as I said. Not because there's anything wrong with it, just because we don't really want to go there. In terms of if we were to start our B section, well, let's give ourselves 4 bars to play with. We know what we've written so far, so let's come up with the idea of another melody. We started with... We don't want the same idea because it's going to be like, geez, really? But we don't want to go... because it's going to be like, did you bring a spring? You know, so conceivably, what could we do? We can get complex and change key scales and what have you. Don't do that until you know what you're doing. It'll just sound weird. I likes it. Let's just embiggen this. It's very hard to read this colour, but I'm not going to bitch about it. That's a nice phrase. See? So we've got a phrase from which we've got our B section. We might decide to be a wee bit lazy. By summing them, rather than having them work counter, by summing them, we've said we're now behaving a little differently. And by summing them, you don't want to do this too long, but initially you're adding power and tension to your piece, which is what you want to do here. You want to get people's attention again. Now I'm going to show you targets. I gave you the idea of target in your arrangement, which is to say if we've decided we're going to have an ABA composition here, we can grab our A and drag it out over there. 32 bars down the road, we know where we're going. We've got to get back to being able to comfortably play this bit again. We can have histrionics in the middle, as long as we get back there. So that's a target. That helps you get out of that loop hell, because you know where you're going. You know where you've got to get to. You're not like, shit, the future's open, what am I going to do? I've got all those notes, what am I supposed to do with them? You go, and then you've just got nowhere to go. This gives you a target. So in melody writing, we can give ourselves targets as well. Let's do that. Another 4 bars here. Keep a sense of what we had before. Let's say we want this only to be an 8-bar section. I think it's too short, but let's say we did want it to be an 8-bar section. 4 here, 4 here. We also know that we want this to be a wee bit triumphant. You know, slash up on that piano. Right, we need to have a target. We have a target, which is up the top. So we've started on a low C, which is low for this instrument. We started here, but we've come back here, which is nice. Woodwinds tend to sound nice down low. They get quite gnarly. Let's be audacious and go up here. That's right up the fretboard. So we know we need to finish here. let it hold. So we've got our source. We're starting here, and we need to get up there. If we were to simply go, I'll put the note close. Okay, that doesn't sound as bad as you think because it's actually got the guitar harmonic feel to it. It's like blue, and then you get that harmonic winding up high. But I'm not going to do that because that in this case is lazy. We need to work out how to modulate ourselves from here to there. A leap can be good in music, but too much of a leap is just... there's no relationship there. So, what do I think I want my first note of this phrase to be? Remember we had that 3-note run before? And how it sounded like super cool? Well, cool enough. See how we're partway there now. So our source was here, our target was here. We know we need to climb, so there's no point starting off and going, unless of course that's part of our plan. So we're going to go down before we go up there. We're allowed to, but largely we want to get over there. So having a sense of how we're going to get from here to there, to just go, would be kind of the missile approach, to say, whoop. But what's our piece about? Obviously we haven't sat down to think about what the story or narrative we're writing here, but we've clearly got one because things flow along. So that helps define how we want this run to be. Also where it is in the piece. We wouldn't have a kind of a run right at the beginning of a piece. As a general rule of thumb, you can do it, but generally speaking, your riff is not going to be because it's just going to be kind of duff. So we're going to work out how we get there, and often it's meandering. That's kind of like a butterfly, ups and downs and what have you, but generally it goes from here to there. Missile we approached before, or like a winding road or a winding river. There are various ways we can get there. Butterfly will be short, sharper notes. Winding river can be really quite long legato things, which would be more like... Actually, we'll go to the string sound. Not excellent, but you hear how it's going. But it still works its way up. So our lead, we've started to... We're going to give it a little bit of space here. Let's try this. There's a leap here, but it comes back down. If we leapt and then leapt again, it would be like... It's getting sort of a bit Nintendo. Which is fine if that's what you're looking for. Let's just see what we end up with here. That's too short. It's too short. I've not got enough space. But because this is an end of a section, remember I gave myself a couple of bars on the end of the first section, I can now say, not a problem. I'm going to move that by a bar. Yay, I just bought myself a whole other bar. Not the most elegant, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. So what I'm doing here now is rearranging kind of the same notes to run into a counter. Again, not the most elegant, but hopefully you can hear the point there, which is they start together, they then separate. Yeah, again, not super great, but it's kind of hard to write on demand like this whilst actually focusing on trying to talk to y'all. So we'll pull that there. And let's just go with a grand bass here, or a simple bass. Let's just... The girls have come home if you hear them in the background. Actually, I can just steal that one. Let's see what we got. So, not compositionally the best, but we've got a B section. A B, it's short, but we've got one. So now we can look at strings, orchestration. Now again, orchestration doesn't mean that we need an orchestra. We don't even need violins. Orchestration is any instruments that we've decided to put into our piece, our band, our combo. So if we were Skinny Puppy, then we could say, okay, we've got our basic structure of what our song is, but now we're going to fill it out with samples stolen from movies and chewed up. Those weird little arpeggio type things that they commonly used. Orchestration can be whatever you want. It is just quite nice to use strings, but not necessarily in everything. Strings work for me. I write in a particular style. It's my style, but just broadly I refer to it as space music. But there are other kinds of things that you'll use. In EDM, you might just call them loosely pads, big ass floaty pads, whatever. I use plenty of them too. So let's, for the moment, steal our bass line. We don't want our strings to sound down there because that's way too low. Move them up an octave, move them up another octave. Let's see where we start to get. Well, this playing over and over is not flattering in this instance. And let's also look at moving this up again. While there's nothing wrong with it, it's not super imaginative. This works nicely. Always works nicely. That actually doesn't. So let's try rising. Yes, bye-bye. So what can we do with this? That's an F. It hazard a B, but I'm not confident. I'm going to go with the safe note here, simply because it's not an end. We might want to turn our string down. That's going around, and it's working quite nicely. So it's given us just a little bit more fill in what we're doing. Let's do something a little bit different this second time around. You'll see that I've copied this. Yep. Copied my lead. So maybe we want to move these up. Not yet. Not yet. They lose a certain sort of power. So for the moment I've said, okay, see, I'm going to double at this point. And this is not necessarily the order I would do it in a real piece, but let's say I did. So let's see if we can bridge this gap just a little bit better. It's A. See, bridges a gap. It would be very easy to say, oh, but that's just what it is, I don't need to change it. It can go around, but it sounds inelegant. It lacks that nice flow. So by using our source and target notes, we can just move things a little bit. So it makes this nice when it comes back in, rather than just cut and paste blocks. Now we want to do something different here. So we're going to put our markers in. Let's switch on our other notes so we know what else is happening in here. Go to our strings. Our strings have ended high. We've got a D at that point, a C and a D. And then we go to a, let's try this. And that's an F, so we can comfortably go to the F. So we're using our to know which notes comfortably go together. So if a lower note is a C, I know that I can comfortably use one of these higher notes and have a nice harmony. See, that's too slow now. It needs to match some of what's going on below it, otherwise it's unrelated. That goes down to D, but let's try this. Comes up to G. Let's just see what happens if we hold it. We may have to match our notes. Trying to match the shape, because remember at this point we're climbing, so we don't want them to go in opposite directions at this point. At this point, the earlier point, it was nice for them to go in kind of opposite directions, but at this point we need them to some extent to match. And that should be our note at the end. I missed. Because it's not there. We've obviously got to have another note there somehow. So now with this one, I'm going to straight copy that and straight copy that. Let's have a go at straight copying this. So as we pick back up, it's put the emphasis back on our leads and the strings just backing it. there we go, boys and girls. There is a complete piece. Doesn't matter whether you think, oh, but that's my favourite style or anything like that. That's completely not the point. What we've done is a huge amount of work. I can't see how long this has been, an hour, hour and a half, something like that. And I've written really all the material for a piece. 2.5 minutes, but it's only an A, a half a B, and an A again. But I was able to reuse this material almost unchanged because I've created a break in the middle. It'd be nice for that break to be longer, or to A, B, C, A, or A, B, A, C, A. That allows me to extend even further. That's 4.5 minutes by the time we've got to that point. But even here, because I haven't relied on an 8-bar loop that goes over and over again, so how long is that? That's 8 bars, so that's 4 times some kind of a breakdown, which is really the same thing, or an unrelated idea, and then played the same thing again. It's just not going to go anywhere, but this is using a lot of the same parts, but moving them around. So melody, if we come out here, we can see our melody starts here. I've been tricky and ended it on the D, but that's because the melody's not ended. It's end of a phrase to allow me to go again the next time. And that allows me to play with things. I keep touching C. I'm often hovering more around E, but that's a thing I do. But when we got to the end, it's back on C. C. So this is the shape of our melody. The melody has to have a shape. If it's just it's not a melody. I mean, there are a few situations in which that's a really good artistic choice, but if it's just like, well, that's because what everybody does in EDM, it's not a well thought out choice. If it's your ground bass, yes, you can do that, and you could use your great big super saw like it was a ground bass, but you've still got to move something around it. Otherwise, it's boring. What you move around will have people want to do this to echo what you're moving around, and that's exactly what you want them to do, to kick their feet out and go and feel very spiritual, or whatever they do. We come back in with our variation, which has dropped an octave. So as I said, it gives more gnarly to that particular sound. You don't have to drop an octave. There's not a rule about that. It's just we're saying, oh, I'm going to give this more power now. And then we decided to do our 2-bar travel. That's excessive. But it allowed me to show you how to transition from here to here and put in all of this stuff to make that run. And then we're straight out reusing the same material. If it were a better arrangement and I had more time, I would probably introduce a different instrument at this point, because I could well have picked up another instrument in my B or my C part. May have decided to add another instrument doing something or other, or just another tone color, in which case it would be here as well. So when it plays with that tone color that wasn't here, same but different, ooh, that's more exciting. You know, second guitar line, harmony in the vocal, saxophone, million things you can put in there, but that's a way of making all of this come together. And remember our orchestration, which is actually just a counter melody. So when one part of my melody is doing, another part of my melody could be going that's sort of simplistic, but that's a counter melody as well. That's a call and response. Core idea, call and response, counter melody. Don't be afraid of using them. So again, if you're using EDM and you've got the great big supersaw thing, then you can add in, let's say, so actually we'll go high, we'll go low on this one. I think that was a chord, close enough, doesn't really matter. That is using one thing, so we've got all the interesting harmonies of that chord, whatever it is, and then working around it. So you can do that in your EDM with some other sounds. Now they don't have to be as overtly melodic as this. A real James Horner kind of thing. There's absolutely no reason why that sound there couldn't be a heavily sequenced beep 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 beep. And people will just go. They may not even realise the different pitches on there, but it's just going to sound so much more exciting. This thing dancing around your beep 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 beep. So that's your orchestration, which uses elements of counter melody. Sometimes they can be obvious, and sometimes they won't be obvious. They will be things like your which you've heard me use here with the long high lines, or if it's more of a pad, they can be long low lines. And where I did variations of my melody and then used the same line again, which was here, your harmonies sound different, because in one you might have, let's say my harmony line's here, notice how that note seems to change. This note sounds different now. So you can reuse material, which is great because it provides familiarity. So long as you're not reusing material that's in a thoughtless way. So remember here, where we knew we needed to climb, and I moved these notes because they were going down to end here, and I moved them so that they matched here. While I could have just butted them together and said, well, that's my loops, man, it would have sounded unthought through. Whereas suddenly makes that so much more lively. So don't be afraid to move things around, and the more you've got a basic sense of what your key and scale is, the easier it is to do. But you can always do what you will have seen me do, which is just to say, okay, look, I'll try putting it there, see what happens, see if it feels right. Nah, it kind of doesn't. I'll move it up or down a note or two, see if it sounds right. Takes a little bit longer, but as long as you've got a sense of what it should sound like, you'll get there eventually. Or you'll end up with something that's unusual but a nice harmony, and you'll go with it. There are plenty of my older records which are full of those interesting harmonic moments because I got it wrong, but it delivered a sound which was mine. So you can hear all those four instruments working together, but sometimes stepping apart from each other. It's your counter melody, and it keeps the whole thing rolling along. Now, if I were in a drumular frame of mind, we could add a nice simple drum section through there. But I'm not going to waste your time because you've all heard drums before. But we've got a nice section. It's mixed itself quite easily. We've got working melodies. So, know what your key and scale is. If it's C major, it's going to start in C, and you want to finish that melody in C. You're going to start with a phrase. If it's a more rhythmic line, then you're probably going to start with an ostinato. It doesn't have to be that, it can be anything. You know, the real classic arpeggiated Berlin School Tangerine Dream thing, ostinatos, but they're never the lead. Edgar comes in and plays some lovely around those rigid riffing ostinatos. There's your melody. And while you may be focused on the drum machines and the ratcheting arpeggios, what makes that music magic is Edgar's feel for playing music around it. So you get your ostinato if that's where you're starting, because most electronic music starts written that way. It doesn't have to. I start a lot of things with melodies, but it's not necessarily the way you're going to want to start. And once we've got that, then you're probably going to want to build your bass line. Go for it. Build it around this so that it's related. Don't just go, oh, but that's the note I like. No, they've got to be related. They've got to be glued together somehow. And they've got to glue musically before you start gluing them with a compressor or with an overdrive unit. If you just go, these two things don't belong, but I'm going to force those fuckers together, occasionally you can come up with something clever, but chances are it's going to sound duff, and you're going to be on the forum saying, how do I get a great mix? Yeah, because your notes are wrong. So think about them working together. So see how that is essentially this, or something like. They work together. Same with our melody. We started with this. That's that. Same idea. And then our string line, which just really started out really simply. Or whatever it was. Really nice and simple and flowing. Copied it, different harmonics. I doubled it here. I probably wouldn't have done that at that point, but it's to show you how you can do that. Different sections, and then just playing around with variations of the same thing, but they're a little different than they were first time, because here we've got high string line, doubled higher. Here we've got doubled, higher string line, doubled higher. Different, but similar. So that's your technique for saying, where is my core idea? My core idea is actually that one little bar. And in an hour and a half or whatever we're at, whilst I'm talking to you, distracting myself, we got out to 2.5 minutes worth of music with a very hobbled B section. So as I pointed out to you, we could have easily gone out to, with say 4 hours writing time. I could have gone out to about 4.5 minutes. Not wasting my time with mixing, not wasting my time with trying to obsess over sounds and compress them and make them do things they're not comfortable to do. I get lovely notes. Then when I go back and work out what's to be compressed where and do I want other instruments and this, that and the other, it's just going to be so much more of a breeze, and they're going to feel like positive transactions. So focus on your notes and what you're doing. Use scratch pad sounds if necessary. Have the same sound that you compose with on everything if necessary. That way you can turn your one tiny idea, and this isn't exactly a really clever idea. That ain't clever. Believe me, it's not particularly clever. It's very pedestrian. But you can take ideas that are, I've got my volume back up, very pedestrian, and turn them into interesting things. Not about me trying to show off, just trying to show how once you've got a feel, you can do a tremendous amount with the most basic start, and that's just by learning to build. And so where you start with don't settle for doing say, well, what could come next? And this is going to feel a bit weird the first few times, and that's why I'd say just start with a stock sound, or start with something like a piano sound, an acoustic piano sample. We're not judging on whether it's good, we're not interested in whether it's compressed or EQ'd or whatever the hell. Just a nice acoustic piano sample. The reason I suggest that is simply because pianos are probably the single most versatile instrument, says synthesists. But there's something weird about pianos that you can play almost any keys together and it's going to sound good. And you do it on any other instrument, it's going to sound like shit. So pianos, you've got a fair amount more flexibility. So set yourself, okay, there's my core idea. Steal that. It's not exactly copyrightable, is it? It's C major chord. And then say, well, what can I do with that next? Variation. Not the nicest. Cool. Cool. You see, same stuff, we just keep rolling, we keep going, oh, okay, and then there's going to be a point where you say, you know, that's actually a mighty great idea. And you can throw away your earlier stuff, or just put it aside, and then say, okay, here's how my piece begins. Wonderful. Then you start making variations from there. And that's how you start coming up with really cool stuff. But it comes from practice. And sit there and go over and over. And if you want to bounce things off somebody, just say, look, I'm not really sure what's good or bad here. And that does happen, especially if you haven't listened to a lot of good music, as I've spoken about in the last video. Then, you know, pick some of them and send them over to me. Don't send me them in an email or ask me to download them from some weird place, you know, but just send them over and say, hey, Benedict, can you tell me what you think of these variations? Did I end up with something musical? I'll answer you. I'll always answer you if you're polite to me. So, little idea. Variations. Variations with the same instrument. Variations with another instrument. Missed. Same notes. That's a lot of ground, so I don't honestly expect that you will be able to come away from this going, yeah, I'm conquered. You're probably going to want to watch this over again and again. I say to you, please, write a basic idea or steal mine and write variations of it. Keep going. Vary your notes. Add some more notes. Move it around. But keep it related in some way. And then allow each one to spiral onto something else until you get something that you go, you know, I really like that. I want to build something with that. And then you'll find that it goes so much easier. Please, if you want to hear more of this, obviously go again, hit the subscribe button. It helps me. What helps me even more is having comments in here that say, thank you so much, Benedict. Or, hey, Benedict, can you help me understand this thing a bit better? That's the thing that keeps me going, because I don't do this for money. I'm not monetized. That's why I can sing Welcome to the Hotel California as often as I like, because I'm not worried about losing any money. I want to help you to get better. I've done this for 30 years. I'm turning into an old bastard now, and I don't want to see my knowledge, what I've learned, wasted. So I want to extend that to offer it to other people to help. Obviously, I would also love to work with people who are doing cool things. So if you're saying, hey, look, I'm working on this thing, and I like the way you came up with that little string arrangement and that run, ask me. Show me your song. Be polite. If you've got $50 to give me, that's even better. And we'll work together on giving you a nice string arrangement. So when your song goes out, you're going to go, you know, that sounds more pro than it would have if I just stood here like, I have to do it or it's all not cool. And talk, engage, work with people. Thank you. You have a great day. Please subscribe button and talk to me down below. I'm delighted.